John chapter 18 introduction. We'll see how this recording of this chapter is going to play out. Tomorrow we need to catch a bus from here to Dubai, which is about 2 days on a bus, and then arrive there some other time. The next morning, early at 9 o'clock, a ferry going back to Melaka, and then to KL, and then to Thailand. So there's a lot of moving around. Why I'm saying all of this? Because in this chapter is kind of a lot of moving around. Not those kinds of distances, but in place, right? Because it starts off with them crossing the brook of Kidron to a garden, the Garden of Gethsemane ultimately, where Jesus is going to pray. We know that from the other Gospels, there's not a big thing about the prayer in this specific Gospel, right? I've said that the other Gospels is more to the last parts about Jerusalem, his rejections, while in this case most of the book has to do with Jerusalem. So he went to a place where he often met, not once off, but very often. In the teaching part, I'll get to these kinds of things, which shows that Jesus, if he wanted to, it would have been very easy for him to disappear, right? So he went to a place which Judas would have known as well. And so like I said, he could have just gone to a different garden or different place. No need to go to a place where Judas would know him. So he knowingly went. They came there with the soldiers and chief priests, Pharisees looking for Jesus. Jesus asking, "Whom do you seek?" And then they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he said, "I am he." And as a result, they all fell down. Okay, another time where he could get away, but now they're all down there, and so he could have just walked through them and like it has done before, right? But not this time. He waited for them to recover, and then he asked them again, and then Peter cut off an ear of a servant Malchus, the name, and Jesus told him to, he actually not in this chapter, but in other chapters, Gospels we know, he healed the guy. There we don't know the name, here we do get the name. Why? Because ultimately the person writing this, he knew all these people, because he knew the high priest as well. So then they took him captive, took him to Annas, and then to ultimately, who was actually not the he was a Jewish high priest in the sense of the made high priest by the Jews, while Caiaphas, his son-in-law, made by the Romans. Okay? And Peter then followed all of this as well. The other disciple, which is John, here he just speaks of himself as another disciple. In the courtyard, then people started asking Peter concerning, or telling him that he was one of them, and he kept on denying it. Even a servant girl, just a simple servant girl, not even a high society woman or anything like that, a servant girl whose word would not even be accepted in the court of law, was now enough for Peter to deny. The lowest of the low, the word of the lowest was enough for Peter to deny Jesus. Wow, I mean, yeah, right, Peter, after that you said you'll never do it, you're even willing to die, you can't even go up against the word of a servant girl. Man, he could have just laughed it off, he didn't. After 3 times denying him, the cock crowed, and that was that. Okay, so the high priest then asked Jesus all these questions, because he wanted to get something to see if Jesus is going to break the 5th commandment and give any testimony against himself. Jesus said, well, he's spoken openly, he did never hide anything. So why are you asking this? There ought to be enough out there. It's like what I'm teaching. I mean, there's enough out there that you can know what I'm teaching. I'm not hiding anything. Okay, maybe it's not the wisest thing in this present world we're living in. But then again, what is the point of hiding it and dying an ignominious death, or at least dying for something, for the truth, or suffering for that? They could just ask, and then the officer struck Jesus, and Jesus like, I mean, that was totally unlawful, okay, because this is going as well to show that the one breaking the law is. They're going to make a big point a little bit later in the chapter concerning they didn't want to go into Pilate because it was the Passover, and therefore desecrate themselves, and so therefore they want to do everything. but they're fine here with breaking the law, which then ultimately desecrates themselves when this guy struck Jesus, and they said nothing against that, this God, ultimately. So it is John bringing out to the original readers as well, this, like you were not ready to go into there to Pilate because of this, but you allowed for this, so you actually, by that stage, you actually already could not partake in the Passover because of your deeds there with Jesus. And so yeah, Annas then sent him to Caiaphas, which is actually then the Roman appointed head priest. So yeah, that is when Peter again denied, and then Jesus was brought to Pilate. After Caiaphas, they did not want to go in because they were to be defiled. I mentioned that already. And so Pilate asked him, told them that he ought they ought to judge him by their law, and they did not want to, because the only thing they could, the only kind of highest level would have been stoning, and stoning they felt was too simple, right? They wanted Jesus to die ignominious death, a death that they can point where and say, that is, he was just he was just like a thief, a murderer, a terrorist. That is all he was, right? That is why they want Jesus to die like that. And so it's like ultimately fulfillment, and shows why they said, no, thank you, Pilate, you judge him. So then Pilate had some questions of Jesus, asking, are you king of the Jews? And Jesus asked him, why are you asking this? Your own accord? And then about how I'm supposed to know, right? And then Jesus, his kingdom is not of this world. And if it was, they would have fought for him, right? I mean, look at how many churches fight wars, right? I don't know why the heck you don't understand the idea, the concept that Jesus' kingdom is not of this world. His kingdom is differently. His kingdom is in this world, but not of this world. I will explain that as well later, not now in introduction. So yes, he said, I'm a king, and this is his born, and to bear witness to the truth. And then post-modernity coming into play thousands of years before so-called intelligent humans, a couple of centuries ago, came up with actually a century ago, with the idea of post-modernity. We're past post-modernity by now. And so Pilate asked, what's the truth, right? The idea of post-modernity is like, what is the truth? There's no ultimate truth, right? The only truth that there is that there's no ultimate truth, which is a contradiction. It's nonsense. Anyhow, but he didn't do. When they asked for the truth, the world doesn't really want to know the truth, like Pilate here as well. He asked, he heard, Jesus said, he just asked the question, what's the truth? And then he disappeared. And he went out and he said, it's this custom, we can let one go. So who do you want to let go? The king of the Jews? And to Pilate's dismay, they said, no, not the king of the Jews, but ultimately Barabbas. They wanted Barabbas, right? Bar-Abbas, the son of the father. Bar, son, and Abbas, father, son of the father. So they were willing to take the false, the fake, the Chinese. Sorry, not just Chinese make fake stuff. There's lots of fake stuff made in most countries in the world, America included. They were willing to go for the fake news, for the fake stuff, because they wanted to believe that. They choose the fake one above the true one. But yeah, that's just what it is. That is what ultimately the chapter was, or is, about. So then we will go and start recording verse by verse, and I don't know where and how. Might be a lot of moving, even over borders in this, maybe, maybe not, depending on. Thank you.